Hey guys, April 22nd, 2010. Got a quick article here for you, and I'd like to hear your comments on this. This is called Why Religion Could Affect Obama's Court Nomination. This is from the Los Angeles Times. With the exit of John Paul Stevens, the court will be without a Protestant for the first time, the Supreme Court, as a judge. Catholics dominate. Does it matter? When Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens steps down this summer, he will leave the court, long dominated by Protestants, without one for the first time in its history. And I believe this is history in the making. That historical oddity has reopened a low-key debate as to whether the religion of a justice matters and whether President Obama should consider the faith of his next nominee. And I don't know what you guys think about that. I have opinions about it. I'm not anti-Catholic. I believe you can be whatever religion you want. Whatever persuasion. You should be able to worship according to the dictates of your own conscience. But I don't think it is safe to have all of one faith dominating a Supreme Court positions that they're in across the board. I don't know as if I'm comfortable with that, and I believe there's some things that that tie in with how things are going to play out in the future, with certain laws being passed. And I don't believe it's an accident that the Supreme Court panel, board, whatever you want to call it, the Supreme Court justices is dominated by Roman Catholics. Also, another article, this one is called, some of you might have heard of Gerald Celente. He's a trends forecaster. He's not a prophet, okay, but he bases his trends off of what has happened in the past, okay? You do certain things and have a certain outcome on a regular basis. Okay, and then you see those trends happening now, and so pretty much you can see what's going to happen right after that, if it happens on a consistent basis, and that's his philosophy. Let me go here to the article. This is called Gerald Celente says this is among his most important trends ever. The world's top trend forecaster, Gerald Celente, who has been publishing the Trends Journal since 1991, says his spring 2010 report is one of the most important trends he has ever published. Quote, of all the Trends journals I have published since 1991, this issue stands apart. Where I too rank it, I would say it is among the most important. The United States is on a path that, if not diverted, will lead the world into its first great war, in quotes, of the 21st century. This is not fear-mongering or pessimism porn or hyperbole. Though the historical and external circumstances are so different that similarities are not easily discerned, the policies currently being pursued by the great powers are very much the same as those followed by other doomed empires of the past. Mired in debt and sinking deeper, America's reckless domestic spending and engagement in expensive, drawn-out, unwinnable wars is characteristics of the empires of their waning days. In the past, the last-ditch attempt to preserve power was to wage more war. And friends, he ties in a lot of similarities to the fall of Rome and the United States. And, they were indebted. Their debt was far exceeded their so-called GDP in the Roman Empire. And they were extended throughout the country, and they were somewhat like we're doing, infiltrating other countries, and they spread themselves too thin militarily. Mr. Celente describes the various hotspots and flashpoints around the globe, mostly focused on the Middle East, including Pakistan, Afghanistan, Israel, Palestine, Iraq, and of course Iran. As Celente points out, it has not been out of question for governments, including the U.S. government, to take our nation to war based on fabrications such as the Gulf of Tonkin, which ignited the Vietnam War, and the cost of 58,000 American soldiers and left hundreds of thousands wounded. Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq was another pretext to war, pushed heavily by the Bush administration, with the mission quickly changing to making the world a better place once it was learned that there was no weapons of mass destruction. Imagine that, going to war with the thinking, or not, that there was weapons of mass destruction, and then midstream, after you find out that they don't exist, to making the world a better place by pushing the military complex. What a dichotomy. The world would certainly be a much better place if a lot of dictators and regimes were overthrown. But you don't see our military in Africa, where millions are being ethnically cleansed. The reason, suggests Celente, is that our President Eisenhower warned war is a big business that enriches a few at the expense of many. Celente backs up his claim with the words of Major General Smedley Butler, the most decorated Marine ever to serve at the time of his death in 1940, who said, "It," referring to war, "is the only one in which the profits are reckoned in dollars and the losses in lives. A racket is best described, I believe, as something that is not what it seems to the majority of the people. Only a small inside group knows what it is about. It is conducting for the benefit of the very few at the expense of the very many. Out of war, a few people make huge fortunes," and that is so true. So true. There is much more going on when wars are waged than just bringing freedom and democracy to the countries which we invade, which is a joke, and it comes at the expense of the lives of fathers, mothers, daughters, and sons. And then Mark Farber throws in a few comments. But I do agree with this article. You know, the United States is heading into a very peculiar place where it's going to have to make some very tough decisions. And I think our freedoms are going to be at stake. And our religious freedoms also are going to be at stake. Anyway, a few quotes. I don't know if I have time to read. I'll just read. There's a couple good ones in here. The means of defense against foreign danger, historically, have become the instruments of tyranny at home. James Madison. There are more instances of the abridgment of the freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachments of those in power than by violent and sudden usurpations. James Madison. Stop throwing the Constitution in my face. It's just a blankety blank piece of paper. George W. Bush. Those who trade essential liberty for a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Ben Franklin. During times of universal deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act. George Orwell. What do you think of those quotes? Huh? They got some meat to them, don't they? Guys, hope you have a good night. I'm tired. I might turn in early. Worked a pretty good day. Have a good night. We'll talk to you later.